All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for a deep dive?
Mm.
I am absolutely starving just looking over these notes. Today we're talking all things food.
Oh, it's going to be a good one. You've really outdone yourself with the research for this deep dive. You've got everything here.
Well, I had help, of course.
Yeah.
But you know what really struck me going through it all was just how much there is to say about something we do every single day. Like, food is such a fundamental part of life, but we rarely stop and really think about it.
It's true. We take it for granted, don't we? But the deeper you dig, the more fascinating it gets. The source material you've gathered, it really does take us on a journey.
Yeah. Like a delicious info-packed journey, though maybe not one you'd want to take on a full stomach.
Definitely not. You've got a point there.
So shall we dig in?
Let's do it. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. Well, most of the stuff we're looking at starts with, the basics, building blocks, like those classic food groups we all learned about in school.
Right. Setting the stage, so to speak. It's a good reminder that for all the delicious variety out there, it really boils down to those essential elements, those food groups. Vitamins, protein, energy, all that good stuff our bodies need.
It's funny because I always think of food groups as pretty basic, like apples, bread, fish, your typical grocery list stuff. But going through this, it really hit me just how much variety there is within each category. Like, did you know there are over 7,500 types of apples out there?
7,500. You're kidding.
Nope. 7,500 apple varieties. Imagine that, huh? Speaking of variety, that kind of ties into something else that caught my eye in this source material. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Bread. I mean, talk about a global food, right?
Oh.
Every culture has some form of bread.
It's the one constant, isn't it? No matter where you go in the world, there's always some version of bread on the table.
It's true. But it's fascinating how the way it's made, the ingredients, the techniques, the shapes they take, it all reflects the cultures that created it.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. A crusty sourdough loaf versus a fluffy naan. Both are breads at their core, but they tell completely different stories about the ingredients and traditions of their cultures.
It's like a whole culinary history lesson baked into every bite. Speaking of culinary journeys, I love how this source we're using, it kind of takes us through a typical day of eating breakfast, lunch, dinner. But then it throws in all these really cool cultural twists.
That's what I found so fascinating. Our perception of a typical day, when you really break it down, it's so influenced by where we grew up. Like, in some cultures, lunch is the biggest meal of the day. It reflects a completely different pace of life.
Oh, that's a really good point. I never thought about it like that. Huh. Before we dive deeper into all that, there's one thing I wanted to ask you about. The source mentions breakfast being super important for, well, obvious reasons. It kickstarts your metabolism, gives you energy for the day. So I have to ask, what's your go-to breakfast when you need to power through, say, a really intense research session, like you did for today?
Honestly, I'm pretty boring. I'm a creature of habit.
Oh, come on. Now you have to tell me. What's the magic formula for a good research day?
Okay. Coffee, definitely coffee. But I've also been really into those overnight oats lately.
See, now that's just smart. You can prep them ahead of time. They're packed with good stuff.
Exactly. And they actually taste good, too.
Okay, speaking of things that taste good, I think we got to talk about snacks. Because our source material definitely does not shy away from snack time.
It's true, and I appreciate that, because let's be real, snacks are a part of life. But what I find interesting is how this source kind of seamlessly weaves in this whole discussion about healthy choices when it comes to that kind of stuff. Sugar and all that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not about depriving yourself, right? Like, I have the biggest sweet tooth, always have, but I also know I can't be mainlining sugar all day long.
Yeah.
Well, I probably could, but it wouldn't end well.
Right. It's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. And that actually, now that you mention it, is a really good segue into what this source highlights next, which is, drumroll please, water.
Water, the unsung hero of, well, pretty much everything.
It's so true, though. Like, we get so caught up in what we're eating, all these fancy ingredients and whatnot, we forget that good old H2O is crucial.
It's essential. And this source makes a really good analogy. It points out that, water is as vital to our bodies as it is to the plants we eat. We need it to function just like they do.
Okay, now that's a really good way to put it. I'm going to start thinking of myself as like a houseplant. Got to keep me watered or I wilt.
Yeah.
Speaking of function, though, going back to that idea for a sec, there's one other thing I wanted to get your take on from this source material. It talks about the importance of, get this, eating at regular intervals. Now, I got to admit, I am someone who can easily get caught up in work, in a good book, you name it, and completely forget to eat.
Oh, yeah, the too busy to eat trap. I know it well.
Right.
Yeah.
But this source, It actually argues that being more regimented about your meals, even if they're smaller meals, is actually better for us in the long run.
And it makes sense when you really think about it. Our bodies thrive on routine. When we're fueling up consistently, it's like we're giving ourselves this steady stream of energy to get through the day, right?
Makes sense to me.
Whereas if we're skipping meals, our blood sugar drops, we get those energy crashes, and then, let's be honest, we're way more likely to overeat later on because suddenly we're starving.
Oh, tell me about it. That late afternoon slump hits, and I'm suddenly raiding the vending machine. Not my finest moments, let's just say.
We've all been there. We've all been there. But it just goes to show, how interconnected our eating habits really are with our overall well-being. It's not just about the food itself. It's the how and the when. It all plays a part.
Yeah, it really is all connected, isn't it? Like, who knew we'd be getting all philosophical about snacking in this deep dive?
Speaking of connections, there's one more point in this source material I really wanted to touch on. It's how it goes beyond, the pure nutrition of food, the vitamins and minerals and all that, and talks about something, well, kind of deeper, more like the social and emotional side of food. You know what I mean?
Oh, are you talking about that part where it mentions shared meals?
Yeah.
And how those have a totally different vibe?
Exactly. Food isn't just fuel, right? It's a way to connect with people, to celebrate, to build relationships. Think about it. Some of our most cherished memories, they involve food and the people we share it with.
Oh man, now you're getting sentimental on me. I'm picturing like big family dinners, holidays, even just those simple weeknight meals where everyone's gathered around the table, sharing stories, laughing. It's true though. Those are the moments that stick with you.
They really are, and I think this source does a nice job of bringing that all full circle. We started with the sciencey stuff, food groups, cultural differences, even the biology of how our bodies process all this. But at the heart of it, it's about that human connection.
It's funny, we started this whole thing, and I was saying how these notes were making me hungry. But now I'm realizing it's not even really about the food itself. It's more about the feeling.
Yeah.
That feeling of togetherness that a good meal can bring.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I think we've successfully navigated this delicious deep dive.
We did it.
Listeners, we hope you enjoyed it. And next time you sit down for a meal, whether it's a fancy 5-course thing or just a sandwich, take a moment to really savor it. Appreciate the flavors, the company, the conversation. You never know, it might just become one of those core memories we were talking about. Until next time, happy eating, everyone.